When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouthwatering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Hey, folks, no fancy intro or anything. John Hendricks here, Second and Saints, Saints News Network, all that stuff. Obviously, the big news. First of all, I don't think many people believe this would happen. But at the same time, I think the Saints, their hand has been forced, right? Like this had to happen. You have lost 7 straight games. Dennis Allen just is not getting the job done. You've lost the locker room. I mean, that was made apparent last night. I mean, you saw the social media reactions. You saw everything just unravel. And look, when you lose 7 straight games in a season where you were supposed to be this super team or this team that can compete, this compete now mode, all this stuff, and you just have consistently fell short of expectations, you have to change. You can't do this. The definition of insanity comes into play all the time, doing the same thing over and over and over and expecting a different result. And that was what the Saints cycle was. And look, it's unfortunate because obviously this is a part of a business. But when you talk about looking beyond the results, or you say it's a results-based business, it, all these other things, and you don't make changes, this is what happens. And I said this on Second and Saints. I said this on the show. I've written about it because if you kept Dennis Allen, you run the risk of absolutely alienating the fan base. You run the risk of messing up your players, especially their long-term. I mean, guys, Demario Davis doesn't deserve to be a loser. Neither does Alvin Kamara. Neither does Cam Jordan. Neither does Tyrann Mathieu. I mean, these guys don't deserve to be labeled as losers. And losing became a culture type of thing here in New Orleans under Dennis Allen. And so, look, the defense hasn't even been so hot. Like, that's his bread and butter. And constantly you see this lapse at the end of the game. The Panthers game was a prime example. You're up in the game and you can't finish. You can't finish. They haven't been able to finish multiple times under Dennis Allen. And look, he's going to land on his feet. He's going to find somewhere else. He's going to be a coordinator, all these other things. But he wasn't it for New Orleans. You just had a losing record on your side. I understand the first year wasn't your way, 7-10, but the way the team started, and that was a big thing for me going into this Panthers game. The way they start is everything. And they always come out and look like a team that's flat. Like the message between coach, player just wasn't there. It wasn't happening. And look, a lot of change is needed for this team. In the interim, Ross and I have talked plenty. Darren Rizzi is going to be the interim head coach, and that makes sense. He's interviewed for the job. And now it's a chance where, look, they're not magically going to get back into a playoff run. This is going to help. I think that they'll come out and really do pretty well against Atlanta. But now you're in a situation where I think for these players and the coaches, I would be very hesitant to move on from this offensive staff. But you got to take a long, hard look this offseason. Take your time and find somebody who's going to come into this building and restore the pride to this team, to this franchise, and to this city, because that is what has been sucked out of this team and this city and this organization over the past several years. I understand you were sold continuity as being the thing that was going to happen once Sean Payton left and he decided to hang it up. It's gone. Look at teams like Detroit. Look at what Dan Campbell has done. Players want to put it out on the line to go play for him. Dan Quinn in Washington. I mean, your coach matters here, right? And so now you're in a situation where you just got to keep this thing together, right? Like, I know the trade deadline is on Tuesday, but you got to keep this thing together because you could move on from Chase Young. You could move on from Marshawn Lattimore. But I think with you moving the piece or moving on from the piece that has been the problem, now I think the locker room, I think everything else now, the message can be received loud and clear that they're not going to tolerate mediocrity. They're not going to tolerate failure. I mean, this is supposed to be a proud franchise. And when you set losing streaks that resemble 1999. Like, I don't know how old you were. Me, I'm older than I look, right? I was 15 at the time. But that's not territory you should be in, right? And we've talked plenty about it on the pod, just how this needs to happen. And it's going to be fascinating to see where they go from here, right? Because I know a lot of people said, let's look at Detroit. If I'm Ben Johnson, I don't know why I want to leave that situation. I think he's got a really good gig and good thing going for him in Detroit. But, Aaron Glenn is a guy that would make a lot of sense too. Why would he leave at this moment? I don't know. But the Saints are going to have to take their time. They took the loss, right? Like, I think that was the biggest thing is most people didn't realize or think that this would actually happen. And look, a lot of us were skeptical. A lot of us said, I don't think that they're going to be the team that would fire somebody midseason just because they feel like they were, I don't say above that, but, that's not how we do business. Well, look at the bottom line being affected. Look at everything else around you. Guys, I said this and you've seen it all over. People are selling their tickets left and right. They're not coming to games. I've had friends that have abandoned road trips. They're not going to go pay to watch and support this team. This product doesn't support it. I'm with you. Like, we're sitting in the press box. I have been really tired of seeing the same thing over and over again for the past several years. And again, a lot of us got spoiled because of what Sean Payton and Drew Brees bring to the table. And, it's necessary. Again, it's crazy to see that it come to this point, right? Like, you hung in there, you tried to back your coach, you tried it as much as you could, but losing to quote unquote the worst team in the league, and now you have become practically the worst team in the league. This is a straw that broke the camel's back. And so, look, I hope for their sake that they can keep the locker room together. I know that is a tight-knit group. Again, as much as we have talked about them, these guys play for each other. Like, they are united as one. And when you piss off Alvin Kamara, when you piss off all these players and all these things that happen, what do you expect? Like, it's 53 against 1. You know what I mean? And so, look, it's a crazy day in New Orleans. I'm just glad that you can now say they've officially embraced that they can change. They can do something different. And what that looks like remains to be seen. But now I think as a fan, you should be a little bit excited about that. I think that, you look at how everything is constructed for this team, this roster. Yes, the salary cap is going to be a thing. Yes, they have a lot of questions. Will Derek Carr be their quarterback next year? Will they go find a quarterback? Will they go find another free agent? Like, there's all sorts of questions that now come up for the Saints because they've moved on for Dennis Allen. So it's a necessary thing that's happened. I think it's obviously probably overdue, right? I mean, this probably could have happened a while back, right? But this team losing 7 straight, like, that's not who they are. Like, this isn't a franchise that is built on, losing in the past 20 years. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is just not who they should be or what they stand for. I mean, and to perform like this when New Orleans is hosting the Super Bowl, I mean, this is tragic. You know what I mean? And you could see how everything unraveled. You saw Cam Jordan's reaction after the game. You saw Colin Saunders be on social media, Carl Granderson be on social, everybody on social media. And it was just tough times. And, for them to pull the trigger and do this, it's refreshing, right? And look, we understand, we get it. Nobody's saying, like, there's a human side of this. And again, Dennis Allen's going to be just fine. He's going to find a gig. He's going to find something on it. The Saints finally can admit they made the mistake, all this other stuff. We can move on. But now at 2-7, their season still is practically over. I just don't see anything miraculous in them unless they just are a Disney storybook telling type of thing where they just go on this magic run and win the next, however many games, 8 games in a row. I don't see it because I still think there's a lot of issues, but there's change that's coming. And I think now that the biggest domino to fall here, you can build a bridge, move on, and at least try to put yourself. Again, I said on Sunday night's pod that I think the best this team can get into is maybe 7-10. Now you got a top 5 draft pick. I don't know if that's going to stay that way, right? But it's crazy. And I see everybody's comments. Everybody's rejoicing. Everybody's happy. Everybody's all this other stuff. Again, I'm looking through some of these. But the fact that, shout out to NOF and Nick Underhill for giving some of the insight as far as the behind the scenes, saying that Gail Benson kind of spearheaded this. And a lot of people said that, does she even care? And that was a fair question. I mean, we even talked about it. It's like, at what point do you just look at this product and say, enough's enough, right? And enough is enough. It's gone. It's done. It's over with. And so, now the coaching search, I'm sure they'll take their time, but look, when you get players like Cam Jordan who just look like they're fed up, and he played 10 snaps, 10, you know what I mean? Like, he played 10 snaps in a game. It doesn't matter if Cam, if you think his talent level is off or not or anything, he's somebody that can at least help your team, but not when you play him 10 snaps. Like, at that point, why is he even on the roster? You know what I mean? So crazy. I could go on and on. I could keep talking about this. I could keep saying this. You guys know as well as I do that you're just kind of surprised this happened, right? Like, I think most people didn't believe it was going to be a thing, but it is a thing. And now the Saints had to make the change. Like, their hand was forced. I think this locker room, the way you looked at it, you look at last year, the way this team was playing, Green Bay ended up being the game that ended up like just unraveling everything, right? That was the game that they had it. They thought everything was there, and that ended up being their game that really, I guess, in a way, did them in. This year, I think it was Atlanta. I think it was Philly. I think those two games, when you continuously lose those types of games at the last second, regardless of how it happens, when you're a defensive-minded coach and you lose the game, whether it's defensively or not, do I even need to say it? Like, it's just not getting done. And so, look, I don't know that this says that they're going to do a full-on rebuild. I said maybe it's a restructure, rebuild, retool, whatever you want to call it. I don't know if it's full rebuild, because rebuilding, would imagine you would have to strip every single thing down to its core, but I don't think that they can absolutely do that. But look, it's sobering, I think, for a lot of people. And now I think some of these coaches are probably coaching for their future here, because let's face it, Dennis Allen has handpicked a lot of these guys too. So I think everything is going to be on the table as far as evaluation goes. Again, I think the offensive staff has proved that they can, at least early on. Now, let me back up, because lately it hasn't been good, but I think the capability is there to be good at what they do, because of course the first two games kind of showed us there. But what I hated was the 4th and 1 call, that you don't trust your offensive line. You don't trust enough to go and get 1 yard, when weeks ago you were talking about at some point we got to get up 1 yard. I mean, your season was on the line. Why didn't you go for it on 4th and 1? It's just all these different things that have happened. And again, the behind the scenes, the players I've talked to in the locker room, even keeled, they're fine. They're going. Everybody is still playing, but they lost confidence in the leader. They've lost confidence in the guy that they're supposed to play for. And that's been the problem. And you just go look back at past years. Look at when they hit rock bottom the other year when they played Pittsburgh. I'll never forget Tyrann Mathieu just basically coming to grips and saying, we're just not a good football team. And like, is that the standard? Is that what you're trying to set a precedence for these younger players, for these guys that come here to New Orleans, that sign contracts, all this other stuff? I mean, it's not, and now, again, if you haven't checked out Sunday's show, go back. We did talk about this Mickey Loomis. Can he rebuild? Look, we talked to him last year, and I think he's not opposed to doing some type of rebuild, but they're going to have to really go over everything with a fine tooth comb. I mean, the injuries are a huge problem, right? You've got a problem with Chris Olave now, another concussion. This man has to do what's best for him, right? Like, you got to think about your long-term future here, right? And if that's in New Orleans, maybe. If that's retired because of concussions, then so be it. But nobody's going to blame him for doing what's best for him. And so, man, it's crazy that we got to this point. And I just am like I'm not in shock that it actually happened. I'm just shocked that it happened here, maybe, if that makes sense. Like, I just thought that they might just be like, okay, we'll wait to the end of the year because we don't believe in firing coaches in midseason and stuff. But they did it. And now the Saints can move on. Like, they can start repairing everything. And there's a lot to be done. I think that you look at the front office, there's a lot to be done there. There's a lot to be done just in so many different aspects for this team. And they got to look at everything. They got to look at everything from scouting to what they're doing in the fitness, as far as injuries go. You got to look at everything. And you're going to have to get the right leader in this building. And when you get the right leader, look what happens. I mean, again, we bring up Dan Campbell, culture guy. You had a Dan Campbell here. Amazing what could do. And so you hope that they find that right guy. And who that is, don't know. And I think everything will be on the table. Everything should be on the table. I think they need somebody to come in that's going to inspire the players and back up what they say they're going to do, right? And so we'll see. But a new day in New Orleans, November 4th. I was thinking about V for Vendetta is one of my favorite movies. Remember the 5th of November? That could have been like poetic if they did it on that one, but they didn't. So November 4th, it happens, 2024. Saints move on from Dennis Allen. He's fired. Saints can go about their business now. Darren Rizzi becomes the interim head coach, and now they can work on whatever they're going to do next, whether that's rebuild, whether they fix everything or mend fences, but something's got to get done, right? Like, you just can't keep doing this. And so NFL trade deadline is November 5th. I imagine Ross and I are going to be live or record later and talk about it. I know he's got plenty locked on. That's why I jumped on here, just to make sure that I gave a few pennies for my thoughts on what happened here with Dennis Allen. But much more to come. Don't forget to hit that like, subscribe button. Stay tuned to Second and Saints. We're going to have plenty more. Saints News Network, all the written work on Sports Illustrated. A lot more to talk about. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Now you can have a great Monday, right?
If you're a facilities manager at a warehouse and your HVAC system goes down, it can turn up the heat, literally. But don't sweat it. Grainger has you covered. Grainger offers over 1 million industrial-grade products for all your operations, including warehouse HVAC maintenance. And even better, they offer access to experts and fast delivery, so you and your warehouse can both keep your cool. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.